A Rose by Any Other Name, Part 2. Roommates. Bonnie threw her arms around Harvey. Harvey, wasn't it sweet of you to visit? Oh, and who's this? Bonnie, I want you to meet Ken, a great guy. Delighted, dear. Oh, grab a chair. Pardon me for running around half naked, but the AC is busted and I'm frying. But old Clarence here, he is right at home. Clarence the boa was hovering nearby Ken's face. Oh, honey, don't give Clarence a second thought. He's as harmless as a parakeet. Bourbon? Ken eyed the boa nervously. Yes, please. Well, tell me, Harvey, what brings you down to my club? You own this club, ma'am? Asked Ken before Harvey could respond. Bonnie nodded proudly. And 3 others down the coast. I'm franchising. You want to see the growth curve on my spreadsheets? That's fascinating, ma'am, but you still dance? Oh, sentimental reasons, I guess, Ken. But I spend most of my time studying management. I'm taking some courses at the university. I may go for my master's. Harvey was quietly enjoying Ken's startled look. Ma'am, I would like to get a look at those spreadsheets. But Harvey was sitting on the edge of his chair, anxious to break the news. Bonnie, you'll never guess who I ran into. Old Artie Stern. Artie? Well, I have been looking for Artie for years. He's just down the road at Glenvale Nursing Home. Oh, that dear man. I can't wait to see him. How is he? Not so good, Bonnie. He's getting on in years. You know, some days are better than others, but I thought maybe a visit from you. Well, of course. I mean, after all he did for me, bailing me out of jail, loaning me money. Oh, the snake was his idea, you know. She poured more bourbon all around. She saw Ken staring, taking it all in, taking her in. Artie was my manager, Kenny. Well, I wouldn't own these clubs today if not for him. As she rambled, Bonnie reached under her dressing table and pulled out a cage of white mice. She fished for one. See, I was a country bumpkin working in a diner, barely getting by, not able to send money home, which was why I came to the city in the first place, to help my folks. Bonnie took a mouse by the tail, lifted it out of the cage, and walked over by Ken, holding the mouse over the snake's head. Its little legs scurried in the air. Anyway, one night Artie comes in, took a long look at me in my tight little waitress uniform, told me there was a fat living to be made taking off clothes, and, well, the rest is history. Ken stared in horror and shuddered as the snake devoured the little mouse, its tiny legs scurrying in the air, even as the snake was swallowing its head. Ken forced himself to turn his attention back to Bonnie. Ma'am, I'm not judging you or anything, but doesn't it bother you, taking your clothes off for a living? Why, heck no. I believe that the naked human form is one of nature's most beautiful works of art. Don't you agree? Nothing in the commandments about just stripping. Ken, I'm a good person. I never sold my body for money. I never cheated anyone or stole or lied. And that's more than you can say for most people. Don't you agree? Well, you have a point, said Ken, dumbstruck. Well, said Harvey, shall we give Artie a visit? Back at Glenvale, the 3 of them hurried down the hall. They stood outside Artie's room. Artie sat forlornly, staring into space. Harvey peeked in playfully. Oh, Artie, I've got a surprise. And then Bonnie walked in, sexy in high heels, tight top, and black leather miniskirt. Ken and Harvey watched tearfully. It was like old times, the reunion. Bonnie and Artie reminisced for the whole afternoon, Artie laughing and flirting like a young buck. Harvey and Ken then left them alone, before returning later to drive Bonnie back to the club. And Ken was strangely quiet the whole time, unusually so, which Harvey knew by now meant that he was moved and unsettled by the fact that so raunchy and bizarre an errand had ended up being so noble and sentimental. As they pulled up to the Neon Room, Bonnie gave Ken permission to park in her spot in the back of the building. The three of them were laughing and joking, feeling just fine about their good deed of that afternoon. Harvey and Ken, being the perfect gentlemen, walked Bonnie to her dressing room. Harvey gave Bonnie a big, genuine hug. "Bonnie, I can't thank you enough. Artie is a new man." "Oh, I'm grateful to you for hooking us up, Harvey. Remember, tell him he can count on seeing me every Wednesday." "Well, we better be getting back. It's almost dinner time, and the residents will be getting restless." Ken, still a bit tipsy from the bourbon, gently took Bonnie's hand and kissed it. "Ma'am, it was a pleasure. Till Wednesday." They pushed through the crowd, ogling the dancers, stepping into the sunshine, and suddenly a white T-bird pulled up to the intersection. Ken gasped and went pale. "Oh, my God, it's Lisa!" Lisa stared, appalled, and screeched off. Harvey howled and slapped his thigh. Ken blanched. "Oh, darn it all! Lisa gets jealous if I so much as flip through her cosmopolitans. Now she won't speak to me for a week. Look, Harvey, she works at the mall today. You're great at sweet-talking women. Help me think of what to say to her." "Sorry," mused Harvey, who seemed to find Ken's predicament very funny. "I got a hot date myself. You are on your own." And Harvey was gone to hear the next installment of his story. But somehow, somewhere, in between leaving Ken's car and entering Elvira's room, he had purloined a vase of roses. He came in, winked at waiting Elvira, and set the bouquet on Elvira's bureau. She smiled at him, her eyes glowing like a young girl in love. "Oh, Harvey, you shouldn't waste your money on flowers for me." "I didn't. I stole them from the judge's front yard." Harvey grabbed a chair and plopped down. "Now, continue. The dollhouse and horrible Aunt Haggie." They settled back. "Ah, yes. Oh, I hated those times. Posture lessons." And we dissolved to the past. Aunt Hagatha's house, the sun porch. Elvira walks with a book on her head as Aunt Hagatha looks on. But Elvira is no longer a little girl of 12. She is 17, almost 18, and developing into a beautiful young woman. Falstaff, the cat, watches her. "Oh, and reading in the evening by the fire." A shadowy library. Elvira and Aunt Hagatha sit in big chairs on either side of the fireplace. Elvira reads Great Expectations, and Aunt Hagatha reads Bleak House. "And Petty Point on the sun porch after church, I remember that." Elvira and Aunt Hagatha sit on the porch in their big straw hats sewing. Aunt Hagatha has her spectacles on her sharp nose, and she looks like a bird. Elvira makes faces at Aunt Hagatha from under her hat. Falstaff watches. "And piano lessons every day after school." The piano room. Elvira pounds out a song from an exercise book board. Aunt Hagatha looks on sternly. Falstaff watches, his tail waving in time to the music like a metronome. But Harvey, what Aunt Hagatha did not know was what happened when my girlfriends came to visit. Elvira's bedroom. Elvira and a friend wear ruby lipstick and puff cigarettes, making smoke rings. They hear Aunt Hagatha and toss the butts out the window. "Oh, and during school." The woods. Elvira leans against a tree, a boy kissing her. His hand pulls her dress up, past her knees, past her stockings. "Oh, yes, and when Aunt Hagatha thought I had gone to bed for the night, that was the most fun of all." Elvira's bedroom. Elvira stuffs it so that it looks slept in. She goes to her closet and gets out a low-cut beaded dress hidden away in a trunk. She dresses hurriedly and admires her own reflection in the mirror. She looks different, cheap but sexy, her huge eyes still the main attraction. She peers down the hall. Aunt Hagatha's snores fill the house. Elvira tiptoes downstairs and out the door, then runs down the street to where a car full of people are waiting. They drive to a wild party where there's bathtub gin and people dance and drink and neck. Elvira's outrageous, the most outrageous of all. And finally, the wee hours of the morning, Aunt Agatha's house. Elvira, quite tipsy, opened the front door, wincing as the hinges creaked. Falstaff was sitting in the foyer watching. As Elvira started up the stairs, she knocked over a vase, and it shattered on the foyer floor with a crash. Elvira ducked into a closet just as Aunt Agatha came running downstairs. "Falstaff! Bad kitty! That was my grandmother's vase." Aunt Agatha picked up the pieces and took them to the kitchen, and when she left the foyer, Elvira noiselessly hurried up to her room. Aunt Agatha returned, muttering, and went upstairs. She opened Elvira's door, saw the bed stuffed with pillows, assumed it was Elvira, and left satisfied. The bedroom door shut, revealing Elvira standing behind the door. Elvira sighed relief. Then she crawled in bed, hiccuped, and passed out. And all too soon, the night had passed, and it was Sunday morning. The sun was beaming in, oh, so cruelly. Elvira opened one crusty eye and moaned. Suddenly she jumped out of the bed, bolted for the bathroom, and vomited loudly. Aunt Agatha peered in. She was dressed in a print dress and a hat with too many flowers. The hat looked more like a parade float than a headdress. "What? Elvira, are you regurgitating?" Elvira came out of the bathroom and smiled weakly, wiping her mouth. "Auntie, I think I have the flu." Aunt Agatha put her hand up to Elvira's forehead. "You're burning up. Back to bed." "But what about church?" "Out of the question, Elvira. Back in bed, bundle up. I will return in 1 hour and put a big pot of soup on." Aunt Agatha left, and Elvira crawled into bed woozy. "Oh, I need hair of the dog." She went to a drawer, pulled out a flask, and drank. As she was putting the cap on, she heard Aunt Agatha and quickly hid the flask. The door burst open. Aunt Agatha was staring. "Elvira, I'm shocked!" Elvira was sure she'd been caught. Aunt Agatha went to Elvira's bed and began angrily fluffing the pillows. "Young lady, you're sick. I told you to get in bed and not get out. Now stay there. Don't let me catch you out of bed again." "Oh, I was just getting my Bible, Auntie." Aunt Agatha nodded curtly and left the room. Oh, that had been a close one. She smiled and leapt into bed, pulling out a movie magazine and flipping through lazily. Back in the present, lounging in the lazy boy, Harvey sat smiling from ear to ear, enthralled. "Elvie, I'm impressed. You were a liar, a cigarette fiend, a drunk, and a loose woman, all before it was fashionable. Truly a lady ahead of your time. In fact, I bet you're only 36, and the way you look now is the result of hard liquor and easy sex, right?" cackled old Elvira Peachtree Callahan. "You silly boy, don't try to sweet-talk me. I know about men like you." Harvey leaned his head on his hands, his eyes twinkling. "So, did you manage to get away with your wild life?" "Well, no, yes. Well, I did get caught in a manner of speaking, but not by the oblivious Aunt Agatha." A wild flapper party. Elvira was tipsy, dancing on the piano. The song ended, and several men helped her down. She kissed each one and made her way to the bar. "Stanley, dear, my usual. Make it a double, no ice." And that is when young Elvira turned and bumped into a man. Andrew. It was Andrew. He looked at her oddly, then smiled, hardly believing his luck. They gazed at each other for a moment, as though the loud party and the wild dancers all around them did not exist. "Hello, Elvira." "Well, look who it is. It's my old friend Andrew. Oh, barkeep, quick, fix him a drink. Wait, what do you drink, Andrew? I forgot." "You were 13 the last time I saw you. We never drank together, Elvira." "So we drink together now. You look so handsome. You didn't get old or anything. How old are you?" 29, Elvira. "Well, you look great. Oh, here's our drinks. Where the hell have you been and why didn't you visit? It's ghastly living with Haggie. She's such a bat. But cheers to us. Andrew gently took the drink from her hands. Elvira, don't you think you've had enough? Give that back to me. I was going to propose a toast. Why don't we take a walk, Elvira? Oh, I know exactly what it means when a boy wants to take a walk. Sure, I'll walk with you. Andrew, I've had fantasies about getting walked by you. Andrew took Elvira outside as she stumbled and giggled drunkenly. She gave him a sloppy kiss, her red lipstick smearing his face. He took his handkerchief, wiped his mouth. Elvira stopped and swooned. Oh, that was close. Almost lost my dinner. Hey, you got a car? You ever done it in a car? Yes, Elvira, I have a car, and I'm taking you home in it. Oh, let go of me. You are a bore. Always were a bore. I'd ask you to play, but you'd always say no and go into that dark study and say things to Father that upset him. Elvira, I'm taking you back to your Aunt Agatha's. No, I'm going back inside. You're no fun. She ran back to the party. As the doors opened, Andrew heard the music and laughing. He shuffled to his car, deep in thought. He took a box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a miniature Christmas tree decorated with tiny ornaments. He smiled wistfully and pulled out a letter he'd written. Dear Elvira, it's been years since I've seen you. Perhaps you don't play with your dollhouse anymore, but I saw this and I couldn't resist. I made up my mind I would deliver it in person because I remember the first time I saw you, ever. You were unwrapping Christmas presents. Your father had just hired me and invited me home for Christmas dinner. And when I think of you, Elvira, I have many different pictures in my mind. But my favorite one will always be the little girl in the red housecoat, her eyes lighting up when she saw her dollhouse for the first time. Although I'm sure you've changed a lot and you're quite a young lady by now, I cannot resist seeing your face light up just one more time. Signed, your loving Andrew. Andrew finished reading his note to Elvira, thought about it a moment, then got out of his car and stormed into the party, pushing past people to the coat room. A drunken man was kissing Elvira, tearing at her dress. Elvira screamed. Andrew barreled in, and without a word he punched the man in the face and dragged Elvira out the door, ignoring her protests, and the music played on. Andrew continued to ignore Elvira's protests as he half carried her, half dragged her, gently, mind you, to the lake. Andrew dunked Elvira in the water as she screamed and protested. An hour later, Elvira found herself sitting in Andrew's hotel room, but never had she been safer. Never in her life, in fact, would she be so safe as she was at this moment. Elvira sat in Andrew's robe, drinking coffee and drying off from her dunking. I hate it there, Andrew. She's always been kind, of course, but I get so bored, so I started sneaking out. And why shouldn't I? I have a wonderful time. I can escape. Didn't you ever think of getting married? Well, why should I get married and make one man miserable when I can stay single and make so many men happy? She noticed Andrew's disgust when she said this, and she rolled her eyes, absently tightening the belt on the robe. Don't be so stuffy, Andrew. It's just I never saw the point. Marriage is just arguments and boredom and adultery and... Your parents were never like that, Elvira? Well, anyway, I never liked the idea of being with one man long enough to let him leave me. Oh, like your father left you. Elvira huffed up and quickly started gathering her things. Why do you keep bringing him up? Oh, good God, what time is it? Oh, it's dawn. How will I ever sneak back in? I knew one day this would happen. Elvira, come away with me. I hate the idea of leaving you behind. God knows when I'll see you again. No, I don't feel like being stranded somewhere when you dump me. At least with Haggie I have a home. But I'll give you a home, Elvira. Don't you see, I don't want you to come with me so we can spend a few weeks together in bed. Andrew, is this... Are you asking me to be your wife?" He nodded. Elvira smiled a moment, then hardened. "No, I told you I will never marry." Andrew kissed her hard. She tried to pull away and then submitted. And now, dear reader, close your eyes. Imagine their kiss. I'm asking you to imagine. For our story is but a third over and has the same warm glow as a sunset 1/3 over, or a life just 1/3 over, still full of hope and youth and possibilities. Imagine this kiss. And as the kiss ends, Elvira and Harvey are standing in front of a justice of the peace. Elvira is holding a bouquet of roses. But the honeymoon was over before it had even begun, for Andrew had a slave driver of an editor, a one William Randolph Hearst, and Elvira had an angry aunt waiting at home. Back at her house, Andrew waited calmly as Elvira tried the doorknob. "Oh, she's locked me out. I was afraid of this." Elvira knocked and knocked. Finally, the door opened, and a grim, furious Aunt Agatha stood staring at them. "Aunt Haggie, this is Andrew. We were married today." And at that moment, Aunt Agatha fainted, knocking over a vase. It shattered and nearly hit the surly old Falstaff, who yowled and fled. Elvira and Andrew ran to revive her. Elvira smiled up at her new husband. "Well, that didn't go as badly as I thought it would." And dissolved to the next morning, Elvira beamed as she watched her new husband shave. They were both startled when Aunt Agatha, obviously recovered from her shock, knocked lightly on the bedroom door and appeared with a tray. "Church in 20 minutes, you two newlyweds. Oh, and do try to keep it down so I can sleep at night." Elvira looked at Andrew's reflection in the mirror. He winked at her, lather all over his face. And now, once again, you are jolted back to the present, but the exact same image in the present, a man shaving, specifically the supply closet, mourning. Harvey was musing, remembering Elvira's story, their story. And he was humming the 1812 as he lathered his face, commenting aloud on his own good looks. He pawed for his razor and then froze. Voices! Nurse Pritchard's was squabbling with Dr. Goldblum. "Doctor, I'm sure they were delivered on the last truck." "Well, Nurse Vaughn says we're fresh out, and the next shipment comes in 2 weeks, so check again." Harvey panicked and looked at his clothes and toiletries scattered all around. Back out in the hall, Nurse Pritchard's checked her clipboard and stomped to the closet. "Okay, all right, I'll look on the shelves one more time, but—" Nurse Pritchard's threw open the door. Everything was in order. Supplies stacked on shelves, unpacked boxes stacked in the corner, extra cots, etc. "You see, Doctor? Toilet paper, diapers, paper towels, but no bedpans." She slammed the door. A head poked out from between the sandwiched mattress of a folded cot. Shaving cream was smeared on his face. Harvey sighed in relief. Oh, that was a close one. A mall, specifically a shopping mall. Ken jogged down the mall, then peeked inside a store called the Alabaster Room, a boutique that carried only white things. White lace, white linens, white chocolate, white jade, etc. And Lisa herself was a colorless vision. White Angora sweater, white wool skirt, white pearls, white teeth. Ken took a deep breath. He had to face her sooner or later, so he slouched in. Lisa spotted him instantly, his Land's End flannel shirt a riot of plaid color and out of place amidst the glacier of white merchandise. Lisa pursed her lips. Ken spoke before she could start in on him. "I can explain." "No, you can't." "Lisa, it was for a good cause." "Good cause? The Neon Club, a good cause? Look, no one we know is getting married, so it wasn't a bachelor party. You're not on the Vice Squad, so it wasn't a raid." Ken forgot his crawling long enough to look at her well-packed sweater, her perfect hips. "God, you look beautiful today, Lisa." Don't change the subject. I am very mad at you. What if my parents had seen you? What if your parents had seen you? What if our friends had seen you? How humiliating. I think you should know that I'm not talking to you. And furthermore, if you... Look, Lisa, Harvey knows this old man at Glenvale. Oh, Harvey, I should have known he'd be at the bottom of this. Well, anyway, he used to own these burlesque clubs. Harvey used to own strip joints? No. This old man at Glenvale did. Anyway, he used to be really big in burlesque, but now all he does is look out the window all day. So, see, Harvey and I figured if we looked up one of his old girls to come visit him, it would give him a lift. And that's all there is to it. So, you went to a strip joint to do a good deed? Oh, honey, don't you think I'm a sweet guy to make the sacrifice? Well, you're going to make a great lawyer, I'll say that. Forgiven, Ken leaned in to kiss her, but she jumped back. Ken, you didn't touch anything while you were in there. No, ma'am. And you didn't watch naked ladies dancing, did you? Of course not, Lisa. You're the only lady I want to see naked. Ken! She leaned to kiss him, then thought better of it. I have to get back to work. And speaking of work, when do you start for Briggs interning? After midterms. He's being really nice about it. And another thing, I don't think you should hang out with that Harvey person. He's a creepy influence. Lisa, I don't even like him myself. Bye, sweetness. And, forgiven, Ken pranced out to the parking lot. Darn it! His econ book. Ken had forgotten his econ book. How was he supposed to study for his midterm without his econ book? Ken screeched into the parking lot of Glenvale, jumped out of his car, and bolted down the hall. At the nurse's station, Ken saw pretty Nurse Vaughn munching a tuna fish sandwich and holding out his econ book. I figured you'd be back for it. Ken thanked her, headed down the hall, and stopped. Noises. Someone breathing hard, humming, in the supply closet. Ken opened it a sliver. Harvey was standing in the darkness, Walkman clamped to his ears, directing a phantom orchestra, oblivious to the world. Ken flipped on the light. Harvey whirled around, whipping the phones off. You could barely hear the music through the dangling headphones. Geez, Ken, trying to scare me to death? Well, I just heard strange sounds and Harvey, what are you doing in here? I'm conducting the 1812 overture, if it's any of your affair. Thanks for interrupting the big finale. I missed the cannons, damn it. Harvey, you are a very strange person. Thank you. Now, do you mind? Ken noticed a duffel bag and a half-eaten dinner tray sitting on the cot, which was made up for sleeping. Harvey, are you living here? Ken, is it your business? Well, darn it, Harvey, I like you, and it bothers me to think of you sleeping with bedpans and toilet paper. I appreciate your concern, Ken, but I'm fine. Truth is, I got kicked out of my last residence. Well, Harvey, said Ken, giving in to his anal retentive urge to pick up Harvey's strewn clothes and fold them, why not stay with me? Frankly, I get bored living by myself since I moved from my folks. Ha! Me live with you? Felix Unger? No way. Hey, I resent that. Don't deny it, Ken. I saw you today, shining up Hermione's wheelchair with chrome cleaner. Well, I was trying to cheer her up. She was depressed because her canary died. And the other day, when you were out in the front yard with the dustbuster vacuuming spider webs off the shrubbery. The state inspector was coming by. I wanted everything nice. Ken took the dirty dishes to the sink and started rinsing them, growing peeved. Why am I defending myself to you anyway, Harvey? What are you, 25 or something, and you live in a closet? Come on, hang with me, Harvey. I got an extra room. Look, Ken, I can't afford it, okay? The state doesn't pay me, you know. It's all right, though. Dad's already paid rent through the semester. I got a stereo, cable, microwave, a jacuzzi bathtub attachment. Oh, and some adorable co-ed twins 1 floor down. I mean, I'm spoken for, but I hate to see 'em go to waste. Ken could tell Harvey was considering it. Basic cable or deluxe? I got all 3 movie channels. What kind of stereo speakers? Loud punk. Can you cook? Gourmet. I took lessons one summer in France. I should have known. Harvey gathered his things, handing his duffel bag to Ken. I'll give it a trial run. Ken unlocked the front door to his apartment and waited as Harvey went in and inspected his new digs. He did a slow 360. A poster of a Navy jet got a grumble. A Van Gogh reproduction got a positive nod. A ghoulish African mask on the wall brought a grunt of interest. And a dictionary of legal terms brought a howl. Harvey opened a kitchen cupboard. Rows of cuppa soups. Ken was feeling strangely on the defensive. I get hungry when I study late at night. Harvey then opened the freezer and pulled out 2 6-packs of frozen Zero bars. Ken shrugged. I love white chocolate, and they're better cold. Harvey shut the freezer door, and suddenly he turned, eyeing Ken suspiciously. Hey, you're not a vegetarian, are you? You don't meditate with incense or chant weird crap like that. No, non-practicing Lutheran. What kind of music you listen to? Early rock, some jazz, a little classical. Satisfied, Harvey sat down on the sofa. Okay, but no easy listening. No Johnny Mathis or Montavani. I won't stay in the same building with frickin' easy listening. Ken nodded an assurance, getting out some clean sheets. Oh, and also no Madonna, no Cher, and especially no Tiffany. I hate those girl singers with just one name. And then Harvey took a last scrutinizing look around. All right, I'll stay, but it's only temporary. Harvey started to pull out the sofa bed. Ken hurried to help. Let me get you some pillows, Harv. Do you have feather down? I'm allergic to foam. The next morning, Ken emerged from his bedroom wearing his pajamas, slippers, and a neatly tied, brightly striped robe, looking very much like a Sears ad for sleepwear. He yawned crisply like a man saluting, then noticed that the sofa bed was empty but unmade. He went into the kitchen. No Harvey. Ken shrugged. He deftly scrambled a single egg, toasted a piece of dry whole wheat, sliced a grapefruit, and made instant coffee. Then he sat down to read the paper. The front door opened. Harvey rolled in, grabbed the funnies, poured the rest of Ken's coffee water into a cup of soup, and helped himself to a frozen Zero bar. Ken forced a smile when Harvey sat down next to him. Morning, Harv. Did you sleep well? Oh, like a dead baby, said Harvey, yawning hugely and skimming the paper. So, Ken, big holiday weekend. I'm thinking massive outdoor barbecue. Corn ribs, Mako on the grill, big vat of salad. Hey, you know any girls who make those Jell-O moldy things, you know, the kind with suspended animation fruits? Actually, Harvey, I've got plans to study for my LSATs. Oh, no. I didn't realize when I agreed to move in I was going to be living with a future lawyer. You got a problem with lawyers, Harvey? License to steal. There was an article in the paper last week about a probate lawyer who took $80,000 from a widow with 5 kids and left her with 2,000, and it was all perfectly legal. Well, I'm not going into probate. I'm studying tax law. Oh, well, now I feel so much better. Look, Harvey, I don't give a tinker's damn what you think of my career plans. I'm just saying that I got a very busy weekend of studying, so I'll stay out of your way if you stay out of mine. Okay? Deafening reggae. Harvey drove Ken's car with the top down as Ken pouted in the passenger seat. In the back were the twins that Ken had promised Harvey the night he moved in. Their gorgeous hair flew in the breeze, and they waved to drivers who honked at them. They stopped at a light, and Harvey struck up a conversation with the pretty girl in the Jeep sitting next to them. The 4 of them descended on the grocery store, the girls heading off in one direction, Ken and Harvey in the other. One twin juggled an armful of Jell-Os, puddings, and Cool Whip. The other struggled with an armful of fruit. They tittered, gathering admiring stares. And meanwhile, Ken compared prices of every hot dog and bun brand, figuring price per pound, the unit cost of each bun. while Harvey happily grabbed things off the shelves and jammed them into a basket. Harvey tapped his foot impatiently as Ken picked up each morsel with the tongs and scrutinized it like an entomologist examining a new specimen. He studied a tomato wedge, commented on it, and added it to his collection. He found a microscopic flaw on a carrot sliver and put it back. He sorted through broccoli trees, selected a perfect one, took delight in it, and added it to his salad. He picked up a cauliflower, spotted an iota of discoloration, and put it back, when suddenly Harvey grabbed the tub and scooped veggies in with a sweep of his hand and hurried on his way. Ken was aghast. Later, the four were reunited at the checkout stand. Ken stood at the front with his pocket calculator so that he would know the total before the checkout girl, while Harvey flirted shamelessly with her, admiring her bright red hair. And then outside, as the twins were inviting strangers to the barbecue and Ken was grumbling, loading bags in the car, Harvey produced slabs of meat he'd hidden in his jacket. Ken was appalled. But before he could do anything about it, Harvey had started up the car, and the twins leapt in. Ken, yelling, had to run and jump, barely surviving the leap into his own car as they were screeching out of the parking lot. And 2 blocks later, "Stop!" This not from Ken, but from Harvey. Inexplicable that he would yell this order as he was still driving, but yell it he did. Then he screeched to the curb and bopped into a liquor store. And just a scant few seconds later he emerged bearing a couple of fifths. The twins applauded, but Ken snapped off the reggae and exploded. "Harvey, you stole those, didn't you?" "I did not." "You did too." "I did not." "Harvey, come with me, back in the store, now." Ken marched back inside with the bottles. A wizened old clerk stumped over. "Sorry, son, booze ain't returnable." "No, sir, you don't understand. A man just stole these from you, and I'm returning them." "Huh?" "He stole them. If you could let it go just this once, though, I promise that—" "No, son, Harvey didn't steal 'em. I gave 'em to him." "What?" "I said I gave 'em to him. I always give Harvey a free fifth. Least I can do after what he done for me. Saved my life, he did. And more, lots more. In fact, but—" Harvey was making subtle shushing noises in the direction of the proprietor, and the man, shrugging, shut up. Ken looked at the proprietor oddly, and then at Harvey oddly, then slowly walked out of the store. The proprietor yelled after them, "Harvey, anytime you want keys to the store, told you I'm ready to retire anyway, and I—" Harvey waved the words away, jumped back in the car, and started it up as Ken got in the passenger seat, still baffled. Later that afternoon, the big barbecue. Piles of meat were cooking on the grill, a dazzling array of Jell-O molds. The party was well populated. The twins, the girl in the Jeep, the checkout girl, Nurse Vaughn, and, of course, Lisa, Ken's Lisa. The party grew into a big, happy picnic as neighbors spied the good time and came to join in, bringing more food. Ken, drink in hand, was finally loosening up, and he manned the grill like a caveman standing over his prize. He laughed and joked, appreciating the attentions of all the pretty girls. He stopped when he saw Lisa on the periphery scowling. He turned over his tongs to Harvey and went up to her. "Hi, sweetie, having a good time?" She gave him the look. "Don't let me stop you from mingling, honey." "Well, Lisa, you looked kind of—" "Ken, honey, I'm fine. I want you to mingle with all your new friends." "But I—" "Mingle? People in love give each other space, dear." And so Ken did, and was better at it than he thought he'd be. And so Lisa used that opportunity to mingle up to Harvey. She'd decided that seeing what Harvey was really all about was about as crucial a womanly task regarding the protection of her man as choosing her man's ties, because men could be so bad at that, and getting her man to cut down on that pesky cholesterol, because you know men and fatty acids. And so she scarleted her way over towards Harvey, all angora and attitude. Because, truth to tell, Lisa was irresistible. when she wanted to be. And she wanted to be. "Forget it," said Harvey, sensing the vixen vibes before Lisa had hardly even started putting them out. "Lisa, you are not my type." Lisa's plucked eyebrows raised to her hairline. "I'm not your type. I'm not your type." And then she sputtered a bit, rather like a broken bathtub toy, and finally managed to spit out her next question. "Oh, this is going to be rich. Harvey, why am I not your type? What is it about me, pray tell, that is not your type?" "Well, Lisa, you are..." "What? What? I'm what?" "Frankly, you're..." "God, you have nerve, Harvey." "You are taken, Lisa. That is what it is about you. Pray listen. That is not my type." "Oh." And she said it in that quick, pert little way that women do, which is usually accompanied by a flip of the hair, followed by checking some part of their appearance. And then she softened. Why, it was hard to know. Perhaps because she was startled by how noble Harvey was after all, or how smart he was after all. Or perhaps it was simply that she was relieved that his answer had not really entailed insulting her after all. After all, she was just unavailable, and that was even sort of a compliment what he'd said, even if it wasn't Harvey's fault on purpose. Well, when Lisa had figured it out, she was just turning to give Harvey a sweet, coy thank you and a mildly flirtatious sort of look, which was okay. Flirting was okay for a nearly engaged person to do, as long as that's all it was. But to her annoyance, Harvey was off talking Jell-O with the rest of the babes. Lisa humphed up to him. He ignored her. She tapped him. He turned. "Just one other thing. Since I know what type I am taken, what exactly is your type, Harvey?" Tired of being baited and manipulated, Harvey turned to Lisa. "Well, I'll tell you what my type is. You see, Lisa, my type, she laughs with her whole face. Not like you do, just with a part of your mouth, but she laughs with her eyes and her cheeks and even her eyebrows and her hair. Her whole head laughs real loud like when she thinks something is funny." "Oh, and, anything else?" "Oh, and when something gets to her, you know, like a sad part in a movie or a tragic news story or a dead dog on the side of the road, she cries. I mean, my type, she really goes for it. She doesn't care about her mascara or her nose getting red. She sobs a river full." "Oh, well, then I guess I'm not your type. I am Ken's type, though, and I've got to mingle." And so she went off to talk to her fiancé. Although there was a moment, somewhere in between the buffalo wings and the unveiling of the twin surprise molds, when Harvey and Lisa ambled back towards each other. And in what seemed to be a kind of truce, they both said, oddly enough, at the exact same time, "I care about Ken, that's all. Don't hurt him." And then they chuckled in that way folks do when this happens. The barbecue was long over, and Ken walked alone with Lisa in the starlight. She rested her head on his shoulder. He smiled and kissed her hair. Oh, it smelled like... Ken tried to think what. It smelled like really expensive shampoo, and he was happy that Lisa's scowl had run away. "Then you're not mad at me anymore, sweetheart?" "Well, I hate that Harvey's living with you." "Lisa, he really needs a friend." "Well, Ken, I don't always like the favors you do, and I don't like who you do them for sometimes, and I often don't like the results. But I like the fact that you're a nice guy." Ken looked at her, a daffy smile on his face. "Oh, Lisa, you express yourself so beautifully." They'd walked to his porch. He took her in his arms. "Come in for an espresso, baby?" She nodded, smiling and wrinkling her nose. He loved it when she did that. And when they went in, they both noticed that Ken's bedroom door was closed. The 1812 played, and it was accompanied by all kinds of strange human sounds. Ken nodded, understanding. That's just Harv. He likes to crank up the 1812 and pretend he's conducting. He really gets into it. It's a hoot, but it makes him happy. Anyway, I'll be back with 2 espressos, my dear. The 1812 was reaching its crescendo, the moaning from Harvey's bedroom more impassioned. Lisa opened Harvey's bedroom door a sliver. She screamed. Ken came running. Lisa, honey, what is it? Ken, he has twins in there. It was the next morning, a lazy Saturday. Lisa had decided not to stay over. Ken was sitting alone at the kitchen table. He had a stack of catalogues in front of him, and he rifled through them, grumbling. Harvey was howling at an old Andy Griffith episode. Finally, Ken tossed the last catalogue on the floor. Dang it, I cannot figure out what the heck to get Lisa for Christmas. At these words, Harvey brightened, and he even turned off the TV. I'm very good at this, Ken. Cool gifts are my specialty. Okay, first, tell me what you had in mind. Well, Harvey, the truth is I wanted to propose, but I can't afford it. Listen, pal, you don't have to pay money to ask a girl to marry you. The ring, I can't afford it. I thought I'd have a job this semester, but with this Glenvale gig... So, what's the big deal? You put some money down and pay most of it over time. Not for the ring Lisa wants. It's going to take some bucks. You 2 have discussed this, then? Yeah. We've gone ring window shopping. We never actually went in a store. I see. Harvey nodded largely, keeping a straight face. And we've gone townhouse shopping. We want one custom built. We've looked at floor plans, but not financing. Again, Harvey nodded largely. Restraint in affairs of the heart can be a wise thing, Ken. See, Lisa and I have talked about the idea of discussing marriage. Engaged to be engaged to be engaged. I'm beginning to understand. Well, Harvey, when you want a girl to know you're getting ready to think about asking her to marry you, you want something special. You don't want to just get her a wallet or a watch or a mace spray kit or a car tune-up. Wait, said Harvey, sitting up. A tune-up? Yeah, I paid for her car's 2,000-mile tune-up for her last birthday. Last of the great romantics, aren't you? Look, I know what you get her. Get her a sweater, a pink Angora sweater. Women love fuzzy things, and Lisa does look better in a sweater than any woman on the planet. Ken eyed Harvey jealously. I'll relay the compliment. But no, a sweater's too boring. Besides, she's already got a whole bunch of pink Angora sweaters. I got it, said Harvey, slapping his thigh. The perfect pre-engagement present, a dollhouse. What? A dollhouse. It's très romantique, my friend. I never met a girl who didn't squeal when she walked by a dollhouse. Girls love miniature stuff. Well, for the most part. We designed one with the exact floor plan of the place you guys want. Get it? Every stick of furniture to Lisa's taste. Tiny little fireplace in the study, little 4-poster bed, a bathtub with tiny brass feet, and an eensy-weensy family to inhabit it mortgage-free. You stick a big bow on it, promise one day you'll build it to scale and live there with her for the rest of your lives and make babies and share bliss. Ken stared at Harvey, awestruck. Wow, you're good. You're very good. And later, Ken was to brood, but in a happy way, about what an odd bird Harvey was. So selfish one moment, and then willing to drop everything to help a buddy or listen to some old soul at Glenvale for hours and hours, if that's what it took. The next day, Harvey had produced a list of addresses of stores that specialized in miniatures, and together they got the dollhouse project underway. But for the most part, their lives were like most of our lives, a whirlwind of routine and rote schedules broken up only occasionally by the ennui. Harvey spent a good 40 hours a week putting in his time at Glenvale. Ken assumed Harvey was anxious to finish his hours so he could resume his normal life. And meanwhile, Ken trudged his way through fall semester and his hours at Glenvale, his boredom broken up only by his dates with the lovely Lisa. And Ken was, of course, too busy to notice that a beautiful autumn was slowly consuming the countryside, and it was from the TV weather report, not his own eyes, that Ken learned that the leaves were apparently more beautiful, more colorful, more abundant this year than they had been in decades. Halloween night. Lisa emerged from Ken's bedroom dressed as sultry little Bo Peep, her cleavage pushed up by a corset, the main attraction. Ken, dressed as a sheep, skulked out of the room, well, sheepishly. "Come on, Harv, throw on a costume and come along." "Nah, someone's got to be here for the kids." "Ken," said Lisa, tapping her foot, "we're going to be late." Lisa hurried Ken out, happy that crazy Harvey was not coming along. They bustled to the car, Lisa flouncing along, staff in hand. "Ken, is he really making his own cookies for trick-or-treaters?" "Yeah," said Ken, adjusting his wool and climbing in. "Treats for the kids," he said. "In fact, Harvey had his very own cookie cutter set with a pumpkin and a witch and a ghost. He said he'd had it since childhood." And so All Hallows' Eve began in earnest. And while Ken did not share his thoughts with Lisa, he again thought what an odd bird Harvey was. He could party his brains out and hoist a few on a Wednesday afternoon for no reason. Then this wild night when thousands were expected to show up in costume and party on the promenade, and Harvey was playing homemaker. And he did it very well. Harvey was into it. Costumed kiddies came by, screaming, "Trick or treat!" as Harvey handed out his homemade cookies, and between knocks, Harvey watched Death Takes a Holiday and sipped scotch. The movie ended. Harvey flipped off the television and paced, restless. A knock on the door. Harvey opened the door, then nearly dropped his cookies. The Grim Reaper stood before him. If it was a costume, it was a superb one. 7, maybe 8 feet tall, gaunt in black, the face hidden in a hood. It held a scythe, and the mist seemed to swirl around him. The mist of an October night, or the fog of death? Harvey gulped, genuinely afraid. "Little big for trick-or-treats, aren't you?" The Reaper stuck out a skeletal hand, grabbed several cookies, and disappeared into the darkness. Harvey ran to the window. The Grim Reaper stood on a hill, pointing at him, then at Glenvale, then vanished into the mist. Harvey flew down the dark hall into Elvira's room. She was sitting in bed, looking at one of her scrapbooks. She looked up at Harvey. "Dear me, what's the matter with you?" "I just had a terrible premonition of death. I was afraid that you—" "Relax, Harvey. I never felt better. But you look awful. Sit down." "Elvira, will you tell me a story?" "My Lord, you're as helpless as a child." "Story. I've got to hear that story, Elvira. I don't know why. You ended with the wedding. Tell me about married life, Elvira. Were you happy? Was it the eternal bliss you hoped it would be?" Then Harvey took the photo album from Elvira and stared at the old black-and-white pictures. "Was I happy? Well, yes. Bliss? No. Oh, Harvey, darling, times were different then. Life was simpler, living was cheap. A steak was 26 cents a pound, coffee 22 cents. Cost $1.50 to fill your tank, $1 to fill a tooth. You could cruise around the world for $700. And I remember a Spanish stucco mansion in Beverly Hills cost $5,000. And now we fade back with Elvira and Harvey to the past again, the hell of the Great Depression. Imagine, in fact, those old black-and-white photographs that Harvey is staring at so intently, with a strange and precise memory of exactly when they were taken, memories he cannot understand. But none of that mattered, Harvey. I mean how cheap things were, because nobody had any money. Oh, there were a few who had some, but mostly the country was wallowing in depression. And my dear Andrew got this idea in his head to drive from coast to coast and document the tragic times that were happening all over the country. "Darling," said Andrew, taking his new bride in his arms, "are you sure you don't mind me cheating you out of a honeymoon?" Elvira, with the unmistakable glow of a newlywed bride, kissed her husband. "Of course not, Andrew. I know how important this trip is to you." They kissed again and again, and then Andrew and Elvira took a break from packing their things. "So, one day we did it. We just loaded up the car and left New York." Elvira and Andrew sat in New York traffic as Elvira looked at the dozens of vendors lining the street. "Oh, Harvey, it was terrible. Bank presidents, factory owners, and CEOs of multi-million-dollar corporations were selling apple on street corners for 2 cents. Hooverville sprang up everywhere. Entire cities built of paper and tin, where foreclosed families tried to eke out a life. And parents stood all day in soup lines and bread lines, waiting for the dole just so they could feed their babies. More than once it made me cry. One time Andrew took a film of 50 men crowded at the back door of an expensive French restaurant, waiting for the trash. When the doors opened, they all fought with dogs for the scraps. One man was killed that day, beaten to death. And life in the country and on the farms was just as bad. We met a woman with 6 children who couldn't afford to feed her family or pay her doctor. So when she gave birth to her 7th, she gave it to him as payment for delivery. His only child had died of tuberculosis, so he accepted it. Oh, Harvey, that was my worst terror. I couldn't imagine giving away my child. For, you see, I was pregnant now, but I had terrible nightmares every night of my baby taken from me. Andrew's car, sleek and new when they'd begun their adventure, pulled up to a dilapidated motel somewhere in the Midwest. He left Elvira in the car, jogged up to the main cabin, and returned with keys. He got in the car and trundled up to a sweet cabin tucked away in the woods by the lake. Andrew helped Elvira out of the car gingerly. She was very big with child. She walked up the hotel steps slowly, with difficulty. Later that night, Elvira woke up screaming. Andrew held her and comforted her. "You see, Harvey, I'd always been raised in opulence, and it changed me to see how so many people had to live during those times. Andrew wanted me to go home to my Aunt Agatha's and wait for the birth of the baby, but I refused to leave his side." The Dust Bowl of the Midwest, a makeshift camp in a barren field. Cruel tornadoes of dust and sand whipped through the camp as a group of impoverished farmers, now homeless, covered their faces against the whipping grit. Andrew and Elvira were visiting with a poor family of farmers who were heading west in hopes of getting jobs as pickers. Andrew took pictures of the kids while a very pregnant Elvira chatted with a girl also several months along. The stocky, weather-worn matron lumbered up to them. "We was wondering if you'd stay and take supper with us. It ain't much, but we'd be mighty honored." "Well, Andrew interjected. "We'd love to, ma'am. That's very kind of you." An hour later, the large family sat down at a table offering Elvira and Andrew the largest portions. Elvira stared in disgust at the barbecued sparrows and fried dough. She got up. "If you don't mind, I'm not hungry. I think I'll sit in the car." She excused herself. Andrew followed her and took her arm firmly. "Elvira, you will come to the table and eat their food graciously." "It looked disgusting. I'd be ill if I ate that." "It's all they have, and they're offering it to us." "Andrew, I said no." "And I said you'll eat it and be thankful. These folks got nothing left but their pride, Elvira. I won't let you take that from them." Then Andrew led her back to the table. Elvira sat smiling stiffly and began to eat. "I loved Andrew more than I knew it was possible to love, God help me. When I was in my 8th month, we set out for Aunt Agatha's, where I was going to stay put until the baby came." Andrew's bucket of bolts trundled down a dusty country road, then suddenly pulled over. It screeched to a stop. But, Harvey, Andrew and I never made it home. And so, all by himself in a dilapidated car in the middle of nowhere, Andrew helped Elvira with the birth of their child. Screams of labor were followed by the wail of a baby. Alone on the country road, the new family cuddled and wept for joy.